I'm going to give you a fair warning now, right now. This is going to be difficult, very difficult, and it's all my fault. Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on the video. Listen, I told you right in the beginning, this is going to be difficult. And I say that because I really don't like the business of remaking things that are perfect. Flat out. We're here. AMC has a version now of Interview with the Vampire, which is a movie that I absolutely love. Anne Rice. I love it. I love the movie from 1994. Love it. I've always felt it was just perfect the way that it actually is. So I had my own reservations about even doing this. I said, yes, I'm going to do it. I did a live and I told all my folks that I told y'all, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do Interview with the Vampire. And down to sitting down watching episode 1. I've sat here in this spot a few times today. And I went to turn it on and I said, why are you even putting yourself through this? Because what is the real purpose of this? This is going to piss you off. You know this is going to piss you off. And I got up and walked away. And then I just said, you know what? You said you do it, so let's go. So here I am. This is Interview with the Vampire. We took this movie. It was a long movie. But now we're broken it up into a series. So I said, let's see what they're going to do. Because again, books are always better than movies. A lot of things get lost when you do the screenplays and all of that. So let's see what they're actually going to do. Well, there's tons of things that are different. We're going to start, and I'm going to bounce back and forth. I had to decide how I was going to do this review. I'm going to do this review in real time. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm reviewing something that I don't know about. It's going to add a whole nother layer to this, if you will. So we're going to have some fun. I'm going to probably really wrench your nerves at times while I'm wrenching my own, because again, I already know the story. I already know basically what happens in the story. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh, I don't know what's getting ready to happen. I got an idea what's getting ready to happen. So if you've never watched the original movie, Interview with the Vampire, I'm going to actually tell you, stop here, click me off. Now you're coming back, trust that you're coming back, but click me off and go and watch the original. Go and watch the original, because that's going to be a precursor to what we get ready to embark upon here on the lane. Okay. So that just kind of is what it is. Lots of differences already from the door. One, Louis Black. Louis is black, and Louis got all kind of stuff going on. So yeah, let's just get into that. I'm gonna take a little break real quick, and we're gonna take a break and we're gonna start. Okay, so forget everything I said. All right. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for clicking on the video. This is my review for episode 1 of AMC's new version of Interview with the Vampire. Now, we start off with Mr. David Malloy, who is, for all intents and purposes, he is the main character. He was the main character from the original movie. He is now aged and he is not in the best of health. He's made a whole career of himself. He's basically kind of turned his life around. We do a little bit of time with that, and I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time because though he was the main character, because basically he's interviewing what ends up being our main character, which is Louis, okay? And this is just where we are. Let me just speed through it real fast. So, in the original movie, he literally did an interview and he was using cassettes. So you see these old cassettes. We're in real time, people. Real time. Has the cassettes where he actually had done an interview on Louis. The interview kind of went left. It went left because that's the whole movie. He basically is telling him his whole story. He's giving him his interview. It is what it is, the interview with the vampire. So it's a very salacious story. Yes, non-believable, the timelines and the this and the that. Come on, the life of a vampire. So it's all of that, but everything ended badly. By the end of it, there was issues had actually arose, and I don't want to get into too much of that, but issues that arose. There was an abrupt ending to the interview, and Daniel Malloy shot out of there like a bolt of lightning, got the hell up out of there, in fear for his own life at that point, is what basically happened. So all these years later, David actually has Parkinson's disease. You see him, he's like shaking and different things like that. He's great. Again, he's older. He's totally older. It's a whole different type of life. He's gotten his life together. What we found out, he was basically getting high back then. He was getting high. That's why he even entertained that type of an interview. He was getting high and just living on the edge, if you will. So anyway, he receives this box. He gets this box. It has a letter from Louis DePaul Dulac. Okay. He gets this box from Louis. It has a letter, and basically, Louis wants to continue the story. He's been following his career. He's been basically keeping an eye on him. He is now in Dubai. Okay. He's in Dubai, and he wants to kind of go back in and redo this interview and do it better. I guess better because more stuff has actually happened as well. Louis doesn't know everything about him until he actually does jump up during the pandemic. Now, you have an autoimmune disease and you jump up and you go all the way to Dubai, which means that you are totally on board with this. Now, this is the thing. Daniel Malloy, he's very snide, okay? And that's kind of, they talk about that when he gets there to Dubai. He's in his penthouse, and the penthouse is state of the art. There's this beautiful bridge that they actually show, which right away I was like, oh, they're in Dubai, child. It's like, Dubai, nowhere like it in the world. But basically everything's state of the art, where he's in this penthouse and that's it. Because he asked him at one point, well, where's your coffin? I don't even know what I believe or what I remember about what we talked about, this, that, the other. But you're a vampire and all this good stuff. Where's your coffin? He said, now I see you haven't changed at all. Like you literally haven't, you're immortal. You're like, yeah, you know that. Like, why are you playing? He said, where's your coffin? He said, you're standing in it. You're standing in it. So again, we're up to date with things. State of the art. The windows flip a certain type of way. No sunlight gets in. It is what it is. He actually shows them, puts his arm in the sunlight where the direct sunlight burns him and he pulls it back. And, all of this little good stuff. We did this really, really fast. Like I said, I'm going to roll through it really fast. We ain't got to go through all that. Okay. So, it was just what it was. And that's it. That's the base of this. We are redoing the interview. So we're not totally recreating. We're not totally recreating the story. We're really building a new, fresh story, if you will, because the story's being told. And it's being told. This is what's so interesting, is that the story's being told differently than it was originally because Louis has changed. The world has changed. Okay. And you're going to figure that out really shortly when I get through here. Well, no, I'll tell you now. The world's changed. Louis changed. His outlook on things have changed. Again, Daniel doesn't remember everything and all the details. He listened to the tapes because Louis actually had the tapes, so he mailed the tapes. So he listened to the tapes of what they had said. So it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be really like a first go round. Again, it's a real redo for them as well as for us. And why I say things have changed for Louis. Louis is being more forthcoming with things because now we're actually telling a story. See, in the original movie, there is a homoerotic situation that hovers over the movie. It literally hovers over the movie. It's like, okay, remember it's 1994, so you kind of know what's going on, though we ain't gonna say what's going on. Y'all was around in the 90s, or some of y'all were around in the 90s. You know what that gives. Now we ain't gotta do that no more. We're gonna go on and tell it. Tell it! We're gonna tell it. See, here goes. Can't wait for the Whitney movie to come out. Hey, this new Whitney movie, maybe they get ready to tell it, I believe. But anyway, so there's this homoerotic thing that overlays, and we know that about vampires. There's always a salaciousness, and there's always the presence of homosexuality and lesbianism as pertains to vampires. If you say that it isn't, you're a liar. You're a liar. Either you're a liar or you are so in denial that you can't see what's actually in front of you. There's always a homoeroticism wrapped around vampire stories. They are uh, uninhibited. Uninhibited. They're primal. They're primal. So it doesn't really matter, baby. If you get it up, you can get it. That's vampires. Maybe that's what makes it sexy. Okay, I like men. Flat out. Ain't no ifs, ands, and no buts about it. But the whole eroticism of it, all of it, vampire, the whole woman thing, the man thing, it's just there's just an eroticism about them that it is what they're uninhibited. It's like, baby, if you can get it up, baby, you can get it. And they don't like everybody. They like who they like. They like who they like. If they like you, they'll make you. If they don't like you, they'll feast upon you. And when I say feast upon you, I mean eat. Eat. They will use you for food. But if they like you, there's a chance they'll make you. They'll make you a companion. Okay, so that's that whole thing. So there's always been this whole thing, but here we are now in 2022. We're telling the story. June 14th, 2022. We're telling the story. It's Louis Dulac talking to Mr. Daniel Malloy, and we're gonna tell it all. Okay, so we jump back. We go to 1910, New Orleans. Okay, New Orleans, and we start to find out about Louis' family. Okay. Louis' family, what's the nice way of saying this? They were emancipated. They came from slavery. Okay, they came from slavery. They are Creole. Okay, they're Creole. And you want to know about the history of Creole and rice, go back and see Feast of All Saints. If you don't actually understand where Creole people come from, and they don't just come from New Orleans. That's not the actual lineage of Creole. You want to know what actually makes a Creole individual? Go and watch the Feast of All Saints. It is amazing. It is amazing. Do you understand me? And yes, a Creole is beautiful. It really is. It's beautiful. It's a whole lot involved. It's a whole lot involved. And you say, oh, oh, oh. But the turnout is beautiful. Okay. So it is what it is. But they're Creole. Um, for lack of better words, they are ex-slaves that actually owned slaves. Do you understand? They had a sugarcane business while Louis's father was living, and then Louis's father died, and then things changed, so they don't have the people. Did they say it in the movie? No, they didn't really say it in the movie that they actually own slaves, but who works sugar cane fields? Slaves. And check your history. There are some slaves that own slaves. Get into it. Anyway, because the fact checkers will be floating around. Come on and float. Come on down and tell me I'm lying, honey. But anyway, they had a sugarcane business, a thriving sugarcane business. And then Louis's father died. Things changed. Louis has now had to kind of step up and take care of the family. Louis works in the shadows, basically. Louis is a pimp, if you will. Louis has 8 brothels, whorehouses, if you will, whorehouses down in the red light district, basically. Yeah, for the most part, that's what it gives. He basically lives a lie and tells his mom he's doing his mom and brothers and sisters he's doing something different. His brother knows different. He has a brother named Paul. They have a sister. The sister's engaged to be married. Paul is actually, we don't find out right away, but we do end up figuring out Paul is on the spectrum. Okay. So Paul is slightly autistic, but Paul has a very deep connection to the church and his spirituality, though he is still on the spectrum. But being on the spectrum, get into this now, being on the spectrum, open. Anybody who actually has children or has ever been around children who are on the spectrum, they are open. They're the most beautiful things. They there's a lot about them that is uninhibited. They're pure. They're pure. They're pure and they're innocent. They're pure and they're innocent. And they are special. And not always special, where people say, oh, they're special. No, they are actually special. And I've always felt as though children who are on the spectrum have a higher sense of being. Okay. So this is definitely the thing with Paul, because Paul, you'll hear Paul saying about birds that tell him things and different things like that. What are birds? What are birds symbolic of? And we just kind of see that in Paul's walk. But Paul is church all day, every day. He sees things. He sees things. You'll see Paul literally engaged, just like you see a baby engaged. You see babies and they be doing this and they be talking. And we know they're talking to angels. When you see a little bit like actual babies, that aren't even on the spectrum, but it's just something that babies do. That's what I've always been told. They literally are talking to angels when you don't know what they're talking about, and they're looking up. They are talking to angels because they are the closest thing to that other thing. They were there. They were just there. They were just there. Do you really believe that we are the only ones that are actually looking over our babies? Not at all. If I'm getting too deep for you, you should be a little uncomfortable right now because I'm just going to go there. That's how this review going to be. I'm going to go there. So it is what it is. It's what I believe versus this whole story that we're telling. But in my real life, these are the things I believe. Children on the spectrum are so close to God that you understand? They are special. They are special. And babies, don't ever believe that we're the only ones protecting our babies. And I truly do believe when you see babies just looking up and talking, they're just steady going on and on. We know who they're talking to, honey. We know who they're talking to. They ain't talking to you. They are not talking to you. They're special. But anyway, so you'll see Paul. Paul's an adult, and Paul has these running conversations, and he'll make reference to birds have said something to him. He's getting these messages. Okay. So that's that. But Paul actually had come down onto the block, and he's talking, and he's at the whorehouse, and he's kind of doing what he does, and he's talking, and there was a little situation where Louis literally, you can't show up looking like a punk on the block. So there was a point he had to actually, he pulled a knife on Paul. You know, it was just an act. He wasn't going to hurt Paul, but he had to like do it. He had to. Paul was trying his gangster. He's like, get off the block. Get off the block. Stop messing with my people and all that. So he kind of had to do a little floor show. This is the kind of life that Louis is in. He's not a mean pimp, really. We had actually seen a little scene where there was one of the girls were working, and one little nasty old white man had decided he was just going to jam her in her back. And she got real mad and she beat his ass, bust his head. And then she kept saying, and I'm not cleaning this, not cleaning the day, honey. Because he gave her, honey, stick in your thumb and pull out a treat, if you will. And she was like, he knew he was in the wrong hole and he just going to keep on going. Child, again, whorehouse talk. So it was cool. But I was like, wow. So he didn't be nasty to the man. He was down there. Louis like trying to fix the man up, and he gonna say, "Take your hands off me, nigga." And he said, "I beg your pardon." And he told him the man was drunk. When he told him who he was, that he was the owner, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But this is something that we actually see in there. Even though he owned these 8 businesses, he actually would. He had a little thing where he could go to an actual white whorehouse. Because again, remember, he's Creole. They're not just black. They are actually Creole. So they are accepted, but not accepted. You, again, refer back to the Feast of All Saints and you'll understand that. Yeah, a lot of colorism. Because again, Creole looks like Creole. It doesn't look black. It looks Creole. So there's definitely a difference. There's a large piece of colorism there. We're talking 1910. Maybe it just was what it was. Okay. So we got all that going on. This is where we know that Louis liked one girl. Her name is Lily. Louis liked Miss Lily, okay? He liked Miss Lily. But all he ever does is he pays Miss Lily and they sit and they talk. They talk. Okay, Miss Lily don't say nothing because again, he's a reputable Creole businessman. So, and again, you pay for your secrecy. Never, it's just not spoken. But he ain't never screwed Lily. He spends time with Lily. He likes Lily. Lily's like that's his girl. Okay. But there's always an underline. You still got a yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. And all of that. You still got to do that to the white folks, even being Creole. Because being Creole, you know your daddy 9 times is white. Your daddy white. Your daddy white. Okay? Generally French and white. And it just is what it is. And your mama is mulatto. Okay? So even there's just a whole thing of you still have that overabundance of respect for the white, and they don't for you. You are more accepted. Like I wouldn't be accepted. I would never be allowed entry into the brothel or into the car, to the speakeasy. But Creole, a Creole individual, yeah, because 9 times out of 10 they knew his daddy. Okay, his mama, she ain't coming down to the brothel unless she going in there to sell something. She going in there to work. But no, just being down and around with the white women, no, not happening. Not happening. It's a slippery slope. But anyway, so we got all of that going on. Okay, so very disrespected amongst the people that he's doing business with. Always being shortcut, always being shorthanded. That this, but you're just used to it. You still are successful. They still live a good life. You just do what you have to do. Okay, so he basically keeps his secrets. His brother goes to the church. They basically pay off the church. You know, they move sort of like the mob, like you're doing wrong, but here's this little extra. You just turn a blind eye to it. You know, that just is what it is. Um, and of course, it's the Catholic faith that they're actually following. It's the whole priest and the confessions and all of that. Okay, Paul spends lots of time at the church, and the pastor and Louis had this little conversation where the pastor, he says, it's more like babysitting. You babysit, so we throw you a little something and we really appreciate it. But they've actually grown to, they love Paul. They do love Paul. You just see he's genuine. And again, he is special. He is on the spectrum. He's very lovable. And yeah, they basically look out for Paul, throughout the day. He doesn't work and stuff. Paul does what he does. He does his studies, and he is, very, very in tune with his spirituality. So this is where we meet Miss Lily. Louis ends up going to see Miss Lily, and she's with a client. Okay. So we seeing Lestat. It's Lestat. We see Lestat. He's a white man. He doesn't really fit in. He looks a little outdated, but he's a Frenchman. Okay. And he's sitting there and he's talking to Miss Lily, and him and Miss Lily's going back and forth, and they're talking, they're speaking French, and Louis sits down, and of course Louis can speak it too. And you can see right away there is this tension that you could cut with a knife. This is the second time we actually seen Lestat. No words were spoken. He actually saw the show put on when Louis had actually pulled the knife on Paul. And that just really got him, baby. When I tell you, got his blood moving. That blood that he ain't got really got it moving, honey. But he ended up sitting there at the table. It became a pissing contest because there was somebody else who really wanted Miss Lily, okay? They wanted Miss Lily's attention. And it became a pissing contest where Lestat was putting money down, and then Louis was putting money down, and then Lestat kept upping it until he just outbidded Louis. And Louis was sitting there, and this is the first interaction they kind of had where it was this thing. He was like, he was so angry. First of all, he was so angry and jealous because it's still a male, still will indulge in a pissing contest. And again, he's hiding his homosexual nature. He was so angry, like, how dare you emasculate me? And then in front of Miss Lily, you gonna take my girl? And it was that he says, I wanted to kill him, but at the same time, he didn't really want to kill him. There was this between the two of them, okay? And he already had started basically mind tapping. He was mind tapping then. And it was like weird. The next time they ran into each other was at a card game at the little speakeasy. They had a card game. And this is when we got to see the businessmen basically being disrespectful, lowballing Louis. And they have this card game, and Lestat pulls it, baby. He ends up taking and freezing everything in the room and takes a card out of one man's hand and puts it on into Louis's hand and then makes Louis win. And from there, they end up having this friendship. They start, he started kind of trusting him and opening up to him. And basically what he was doing at this time, are y'all ready? He was grooming. And he was hunting him, is what he was doing. Grooming and hunting him. And this is where my issue comes in. This is where I'm going to have a hard time, because I hate Lestat. I always hated Lestat in this story. I hate who he is. I hate what he stands for. I hate him. He is very predatory. He's very predatory. And even though Louis is a grown man, remember, Lestat is hundreds of years older than Louis. And he is literally grooming him. He's impressing him with things that he has. He's making things happen for Louis that wouldn't normally happen for Louis. He's kind of using black magic, if you will. Those are those vampire gifts, which are more like black magic. They come from a dark place. And he basically is preying upon Louis. He was, from the time he'd seen him, it was like a love at first sight thing. He even speaks to him in a way that you wouldn't speak just normally, just be out given, oh yes, you're my destiny, and this, that, thing, and the other. Like, he was saying stuff like that in front of Miss Lily, and it was like, men don't say that they are other men. Well, I mean, somebody would say that to me, and it's like, oh, say it again. Tell me more about me. Okay, so, but heterosexual men don't speak to each other that way. He's too bold and too brazen. So this has always been the thing. This has always been my thing with this whole movie. I've always hated Lestat. Lestat is not a nice person from the door. He's not a nice person. And this is some of what I kind of did like about this part, this adaptation of this. So we got this going on. I'm already irritated. I see that he's hunting and he's grooming him. And I'm feeling the predatory position of this, and I hate it. He ends up, they're hanging out. They're just like hanging out and really getting close. Lestat is showing huge amounts of skill and care with this situation and self-control. Okay. He ends up taking Lestat home for dinner with the family. In the midst of this, I tell y'all about my Paul. Now, I fell in love with Paul, okay? Paul literally clocks Lestat and questions him about his salvation and his friendship pretty much with Louis. So once he does it, they were like, Paul, don't be rude. He's like, I'm not being rude. He asked him something about his salvation or whatever. And in the midst of it, you see that Lestat gets a little irritated, and he basically he freezes everybody. Everybody is frozen except for Paul, Louis, and him. And Paul is partially frozen. He's literally tapped in. Not so much frozen, but really tapped in. And he snaps, and he's basically telling him about what his whole church, because he has a whole church hurt thing. I said, oh, pay attention to that part, y'all. He's been hurt by the church. At one point, he was at a monastery. He was studying. And he has studied. He was really giving you all of this. His father was abusive, and physically and mentally, and he would starve him and all this other stuff. But he was basically telling all these things. You know, he had learned all of the Bible, like he knew the Bibles, all of them, backwards and forwards. And his father just wasn't a man like that. His father was evil, and he was mean, and he basically, he was like an outcast to his father for that. So the father would mistreat him because of that. And then he basically was going about, you know, he was just going there, and he was like talking, and he was starting to talk very gruff. And that's when Louis was like, stop it. Do not do this shit. Don't do this. Not here, not with my family. And he was just getting into it. He was saying something about is that it? Did you hear what you needed to hear? Did you get the answers you wanted about those birds talking in your head? And that? I said, oh, Miss Lestat, don't do it, bitch. Don't do it. So I was trying to rock with the story, but when he did that to Paul, I said, I remember right away. I said, I hate Lestat. I've always hated Lestat because you're not nice. You're everything but what you try to play and, you know, put yourself out there to be. You're mean and you're hateful. And no matter what happened to you that got you like that, you're a mean old bitch. And that's just who he is. That's y'all gonna see. He's a mean old bitch. And that's all. I don't even know no nicer way to say it. Sorry, y'all. Mean old bitch. Anyway, so Louis told him, not my baby brother. You stop that. So he stopped it. He cut it off. And Paul was like, whatever, you know, Paul's special. So all your gifts, they work on Paul, but Paul sees you. He's seeing the forest through the trees, and he clocked him. Like I said, he clocked his T. He clocked his evil. He clocked his gay. He clocked it all. Okay. And the birds that speak to him were speaking loudly. Anyway, so it was this night that Lestat goes and makes his move, and he lures, after they walk, you know, he walks him, takes him home and all of that. He lures Louis into his house that night. He's like, how about you come up for a nightcap? He's like, a nightcap? He's like, yeah, you can't say no. I bought you a gift. He's like, a gift? Yes, a flower. I bought you a flower that you like, a lily. And you look up on the balcony, and Miss Lily's up there, baby. He done purchased Miss Lily and then brought her up out of the brothel. And she's there. And baby, they indulge in this threesome. Baby, when I tell you, this was some old sexy, out of pocket stuff. Do you understand? But again, it got on my nerves because it was there wasn't full out consent. There was magic mixed in. Still there was consent, but it was you were pressing. You were pressing. It wasn't total full will. So that irritated me. Again, it just the predatory nature, the grooming. It was irritating me. Anyway, but it starts off as this whole thing, and he's like, well, yeah, Miss Lily told me all just like to talk. You know, read Miss Lily's mind, child. He got her together. But anyway, they go in, and he starts off with Miss Lily, and Miss Lily's doing her thing. And she actually, for the first time, she ended up going down on him. She went down on him, and then she come back up, and he's like, they're both, as he's going down on him, he's sitting across. He said, oh, so this your thing you like to watch? And he's like, you know, okay. He runs a brothel, so he's used to some of the fetishes of white man. Okay. So he's like, oh, so you want to watch? That's all right. I get it. Cause there's always this sexual tension. Um, like I said, Miss Lily go down on him, come back up. Baby go to kiss him in the mouth. He put a stop to that. Baby, he says, sleep well, Miss Lily. Baby, and he put something on Miss Lily, honey, and Miss Lily just fell off. She floated off to sleep. And when I say she was asleep, she was knocked out. Baby, when I tell you the two of them got together and got to getting down, honey. Them two got to getting down, baby. They was naked. And then one of the sexiest things in the world, child. Louis grabbed him because it just, the whole tension had just unfolded at that point. He took him and slammed him up against the wall. I said, uh-oh, baby. And then he turned around. I said, whoa, wait a minute. What you doing, Louis? Honey, Louis fell back in his arms, honey, and they levitated. I said, oh, girl, he got you. And he bit him for the first time. And it's what is considered, he gave it a French, he called it something French, but it's a slight taste is basically what it is. He didn't get into him enough to kill him. It was just a taste. Just took a little taste. The taste opens the door for him to be completely in his head at this point. That was that. And he, the experience, he said, I know being an openly gay Negro man it's just a no-no in New Orleans. So he really was all messed up behind it. And he basically started to really avoid Lestat at that point. He just avoided him. So this is when things get very ugly, because after that, the wedding happens. Then there was this really cool scene where it was beautiful. Paul and Louis did this whole tap dance routine for the sister, because the father's supposed to have the first dance with the daughter at the wedding, but their father's dead. So they go ahead and they do what they do. And that's that. That's it. That's all. And they go ahead and you know what? I don't know, because now I'm questioning, was their dad actually black? I'm questioning, was their dad black? I don't think he was. I think their dad was white. I think their dad was white. But then he might not have been. He might not have been. But they had a whole sugarcane business. So I don't know. I want to say maybe their dad was actually black. But yeah, whatever it was, he was respected. He was respected. He had that sugarcane business, and it was a thriving sugarcane business. But yeah, I believe he was a black man that actually owned slaves. But anyway, whatever. Their mother's Creole. Their mother is Creole. Because I looked at it and I'm thinking Paul is actually dark skinned. Paul is dark. And the sister is brown skinned. And then Louis actually looks more like the mother. So that's why Louis is more acceptable down the way, except than Paul is. And also Paul is actually on the spectrum as well. But yeah, I'm thinking maybe their dad was black. However, anyway, another thing for another time. I still stand by what I said about Creole and how Creole was done and all that. Again, go watch Feast of All Saints and you'll understand what I mean. Okay, so um they do this whole little dance. It was fantastic. And then that night, like as the morning is coming up, as the sun is coming up, the two of them, Paul and Louis, climb up on top of the house. They always climb, they always do this. They climb up on top of the house and they're talking, they're having a conversation. Now keep in mind, there's been no conversation back and forth with him and Lestat. He's just been totally avoiding him. And Paul told him, he said, hey, are you still doing business with that man? Because that's how he sold Lestat to them. He told me he's just a man that he's doing business with and everything. So you still doing business with that man? He says, no, we're not doing business anymore. He was like, oh, okay. He said, because that's good that you're not doing business with him anymore. You know he's the devil. He's the devil. I said, oh, okay. And that's what he said. He said he's the devil. And he told me himself that he's here to take souls. And they're just talking. And then, he says, you need to get married to Hazel. So who's Hazel? He says, the woman that you were dancing with too close. You need to marry Hazel. You dance that close, then you need to marry her. So you need to go ahead and marry her. And then he says, he gave all that he had. Then he says, I had too much of that checkered cake. And he said, I love you, Louis. And Louis said, I love you too, Paul. And when he looks over, he's walking. He's just walking like in a daze. And he said, I had too much of that checkered cake. And he's like, Paul. And he literally just walks straight off of the top of the house and right down to the pavement. Bam, head cracked. And I said, goddamn Lestat. The way in which it had, because he clocked his teeth, he basically spoke it out loud. That was Lestat's doing. And I got pissed then. I was like, you know what? I ain't got this to do. Here we go already. See, Lestat, oh, you made me want to hurt you. Anyway, then as it went on, the mother basically blamed Louis. She said, you had to have said something to him up there. He wouldn't have just did that. Why were y'all even up there? He's like, we always go up there, whatever. Said no. She said, no, you can't kill yourself and make it into the gates of heaven. Paul is going to hell, and it's all because of you. I know it had to be something that you had to say to him. You was always knocking him down a peg. It was like, why is the mother doing it? The mother was just in grief. So that was just terrible. Then we go to the funeral. And at the funeral, Lestat is on the streets, in New Orleans, they will do like marches. I don't know all the proper terms for it, but they will march down the street with the body and everything, as part of their ritual and all that. They were going down there, and Lestat interrupted. I said, oh, no. Now you show, Paul said you was the devil. You out of order. You are out of order, Mr. Undead. You better quit it. He stopped and get in there. He's talking to him, and they actually had a little spat there. And he's like, "It is my brother's funeral. Back off." And he's like, "You've been ignoring me." I said, "Oh, just like an old bitch, just carrying on." So he's like, he told him, he said, "My brother died. Just back off." He said, "Paul told me he longed for that stone." See what I mean? When I tell you that Lestat is evil and mean, he's evil and mean. He's not nice at all. At all. He said that mean, nasty stuff, and he like pushed him in the chest and told him, go away. So they go down, they get ready to go back to the wake. The mother's just pissed. She tells Louis, no, I don't want you to walk me home. The sister says she's in grief. Just don't worry about it. It's going to go, But this has basically, he's lost a brother. The mother is against him. And the sister is just pitying him. That whole thing, trying to be the man of the house, and just everything was just bad. So he's at this low point. He ends up walking and just getting drunk. He gets so drunk. He's drunk. He ends up going to the brothel. He's like, I want to see Lily. Lily, I like my Lily. I want my Lily. He goes there to Lily, and he's like, I'll pay. I don't care who she's with. I'll pay more. So the madam, she says, no, baby. Lily died a few days ago. She died of the fevers. There's these fevers going around, and she died of the fevers. And he knew. He was like, what the hell is this? So that just took him way off. He then ended up doing what Paul would do. He went to the church. He's in church. He gets the priest. Him and the priest is in there. They're in the confessional booth. And Paul would always fuss at him about confessing. He's confessing his sins, confessing, giving all these sins. And the next thing you know, like, it was going down in the church. And then you hear, and you see like stuff moving, you see the priest is like snatched out. And it happened because literally at that point, he had exposed Lestat. He's like, I laid with a man, like he said everything about the brothels and the lies he'd been telling to the family and how he had ashamed his father and blah, 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 blah. And then he says, and I laid with a man and this, that thing, and the other. And now I can't get him out of my head. He's the devil. And he's just talking. Honey, when he said that, the priest was like, wait a minute, stop. Because it was like none of that. It was like, you doing too much. And baby, the priest that got snatched out, baby. When I tell you, Louis opens up that confessional booth on the other side, and all you see is the priest's feet, baby. And he goes around the pew, and the pew's knocked over, and blood is everywhere, honey. And Lestat is over there feeding on the priest. And then he told him, he said, you should be embarrassed to even downplay yourself to him. He's ridiculous. He's not who he has no power. You're basically, he was given that whole thing of like, he is nothing but sin himself, and you feel like you have to confess to him. So he's really like going literally straight against the whole, what the Catholics believe. I said, Lord have mercy. And then he told me, he said, and he said, you said everything. We get it. Everybody knows and all that. He said, but one thing you got wrong. I am not the devil. I'm not the devil. He said, you did the stuff with Paul, this, that, the other said. And then Lily, he said, there's no fevers here. There's no fevers. He said, you did this. This is you. Baby, while they doing what they doing, there's a younger priest who actually comes like, well, all this commotion. And he looks and he sees Lestat turns around. He got blood all over the place and his fangs are out. And the priest, he starts trying to run and he slipped in the blood and he fell. And he gets up. As he gets up, Lestat walking toward him like Jason, baby. Jason and Michael Myers. I said, no, he ain't. No, he is not. And he slowed him down, and the priest, he's running. And everything's going in slow motion. He gets to the gate and he's trying to open the gate. And Lestat took and just punched, boom, his hand straight through his head, through the back of his head and out through his face, and then pulled it back. I said, see, you do too much. There's no need. Like see, Lestat has a thing. Again, he got church hurt. He is church hurt. He ain't got it for priests. He ain't got it for church. So it's totally disrespectful. He did the most because again, he really ain't got it for them. And he just did the most. It was just so extra. It was so extra. Like, how dare you? It wasn't even necessary. Yes, I understand you had to kill him because he didn't need to go and expose you. But really, punch through his head? Really? I can't stand Lestat. Anyway, turns around and he told him, he said, I give death to those who deserve it. So I guess that was Lily too. Girl, please. Anyway, then he's speaking and he's saying different things, and then he says, you just always lowering yourself and this, that, and the other. And then you ran in here and you're confessing to your non-existent God. I said, oh, Lestat, child, just cannot with you. And he ends up, he's running from Lestat and he falls down up at the altar. He's at the altar. Lestat gets up to him and he's telling him, basically, I love you. I see you. I hate how you basically been treated. I hate the circumstances that you basically have. I could give you something different. All I need for you to do is just nod your head and tell me yes. Be my companion. This, that, thing, and the other. And he was going through in his mind, because again, this is the part, this is that grooming. This is that hunting. And again, there is that lure of that dark magic going on because it's not just free will. You still got him in this trance. You're in his head. And he's saying, like, even with me just wanting to die, because basically everything he loved has just been swiped away. Sister don't, Your sister not respecting you basically because you feel like she pities you. Your mama is just done with you. Your brother's gone. You love Lily. She gone, you know. And he's like, but the offer, is that connection that they have already made. And that's where I feel like it still wasn't actual free will. He groomed him into basically saying yes. And he's like, okay. And he goes over and he bites it. He's like, drain me to the threshold of death. And that's exactly what he did. You watch him literally die. Like you're watching his skin, just watching him die. And then you see Lestat bite his wrist and then feed him the blood, and he turns and it just is what it is. And he says it's the end and the beginning. And then we flash back to the present, and they're sitting there and you see Louis cry one tear of blood, baby. I said, oh, listen, this was episode 1. It was really, really good. Really, really good. All my apprehensions kind of like flew out the window. I like where we are. I like where we are with this. I like that this is a new spin. It's not just another old boring remake. This was skillfully done. Um, and I know it's going to be rough for me because I'm going to be going through situations because again, I know the story. I know the actual story. So the stuff that they're going to add on, but we basically know we know his background story. We're going to get the updated version, which is going to be good. It's going to be fresh. It's going to be new. I think it's going to be very, very entertaining. But y'all are going to hear me. I'm going to be dragging Lestat this whole time. I'm telling y'all now, if you're a fan of Lestat, baby, you're going to be mad with me because I can't stand Lestat. He's just predatory. Like I said, I can't stand him. And he's mean and he's hateful and he's nothing like what it is that he seems. He is just out of order, period. But Louis, yeah, Brad Pitt played Louis and made us love Louis, and he was fine, fine, fine. And this new guy who's playing Louis is fine, baby, fine, and he just so likable. He's a pimp. He was a pimp and had 8 whorehouses, but he was still very likable. The character itself is very likable because he's broken. He's broken. That's all. He was broken. Sweet as pie. Broken and thrown into some bull crap. But anyway, this is it. That's all I got for this one. This is episode 1. Episode 1 title, In Throes of Increasing Wonder, is what the name of this episode was. Is what it is. Listen, I will see you all back here for episode 2 very shortly. Later, you guys.